It was late October, a Friday evening. I'd been grinding 60-hour weeks at work for 3 straight months, and my buddy Marcus had been texting me for weeks about this road trip. Nothing fancy. Just the two of us, an old-school motor lodge outside of Gatlinburg, Tennessee, some hiking in the Smokies, and 0 cell service. That last part was supposed to be a selling point. Get off the grid, clear your head, come back human again. Marcus had to back out last minute. His daughter got sick, I understood. But by that point, I'd already put in for the days off, I'd already packed my bag, and honestly, I needed this more than I'd admitted to myself. So I went alone. I left Nashville around 4 in the afternoon. The drive was easy at first, the kind of highway miles where your mind just floats. By the time I crossed into the mountains, the sky had gone from orange to deep purple, and the GPS was rerouting me down 2-lane roads I didn't recognize. That's fine. That's the Smokies. Everything is 2-lane roads and hairpin turns once you get deep enough. The lodge was called the Ridgeline Rest. I'd found it on a travel blog, one of those hidden gem write-ups with soft-lit photos of wood-paneled rooms and a wrap-around porch with rocking chairs. $48 a night. Cash preferred. Should have thought harder about that part. I pulled in around 7:30. The parking lot had gravel that crackled under my tires, a single floodlight buzzing over the office door, and maybe 4 or 5 other cars parked at different units. That's when I saw the sedan ahead of me slow down, idle for a second, and then pull a slow U-turn and leave. Not rushed, just quiet and deliberate, like whoever was driving had seen something they didn't like. I watched their taillights disappear around the bend. Then I grabbed my bag and went inside. The man at the desk was older, heavy-set, with a ring of white hair and reading glasses sitting low on his nose. He barely looked up when I walked in. Asked my name, slid a paper registration card across the counter, told me checkout was at 11, cash or card. I paid card. He ran it on one of those old wireless terminals, the kind that takes 45 seconds and sounds like a fax machine, and handed me a physical key. Room 7. The room itself was fine, clean enough, smelled like pine cleaner and old carpet. The TV had maybe 15 channels, the shower pressure was decent, and the bed had one of those heavy quilts that feels like being wrapped in something your grandmother made. I was asleep by 9:30. I woke up at 2 in the morning, not slowly. All at once, like something had yanked me out of sleep. I lay there in the dark for a second, heart pounding, trying to figure out why. The room was silent. I told myself it was nothing. New place, unfamiliar sounds, an overtired brain. I closed my eyes. Then I heard the door handle move. Not knock, not a voice, just the handle. A slow, deliberate turn, like someone was testing whether it was locked. I stopped breathing. The handle held. Locked. The turning stopped. I sat up in bed. I didn't move for probably 30 seconds, just stared at the door in the dark. The gap at the bottom showed the faint glow of the parking lot light outside. I could see a shadow there, 2 feet standing still. I want to be honest with you, I'm not someone who panics. I grew up in South Memphis. I've had hard moments in my life. But something about the total silence of that person just standing at my door, not leaving, not knocking, just standing, hit me somewhere primal. Every instinct I had fired at once. I didn't turn on the light. That mattered, I think. I slid out of bed onto the floor, grabbed my phone off the nightstand, and crawled to the corner of the room, keeping low and out of sight of the window. The shadow was still there. I dialed 911, whispered my location. The dispatcher kept her voice calm and asked me if I was in immediate danger. I said I didn't know. She told me to stay on the line and said a unit would be there in approximately 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I was in the mountains of Tennessee at 2 in the morning and help was 20 minutes away. The shadow moved slowly along the front of my door and toward the window. I pressed myself flat against the wall beside the window, not in front of it, beside it, and I watched the curtain glow faintly as someone leaned in close on the other side of the glass, close enough that I could hear breathing. Slow and even, like it wasn't even trying to be quiet, like it didn't need to be. I'm telling you, that breathing was the worst part, not frantic, not desperate, patient. It lasted maybe 4 minutes, then it stopped. The shadow pulled back from the window. I heard gravel shift once, then nothing. I stayed in that corner with the dispatcher on the phone until I saw blue light sweep across the ceiling. 2 officers knocked on my door about 18 minutes after my call. I let them in, hands shaking, and walked them through everything. They checked the exterior of the room, the parking lot, the tree line behind the property. One of them came back in holding a flashlight and told me they'd found boot prints in the mud directly outside my window. Deep ones. Like whoever it was had stood there for a while. They ran the registration, talked to the old man at the desk, who claimed he'd heard nothing and seen nothing. Wasn't lying exactly, but wasn't surprised either. That bothered me more than anything he could have said. The officers offered to wait while I packed. I took them up on it. Here's the part that has never fully left me. As I was loading my bag into my car, one of the deputies pulled me aside, quietly, away from his partner. He told me that in the past 2 years there had been 3 incidents at properties within a 12-mile stretch of that road. Different locations, similar pattern, a lone traveler, a rural lodging, someone trying doors in the middle of the night. No one had been hurt yet. That word "yet" sat in my chest like a stone. They never identified anyone. No arrests. No suspect. Nothing on any camera because most of these places don't have them. I drove through the night and didn't stop until I hit a Waffle House outside of Cookville with a parking lot full of trucks and a dining room full of people. I sat at the counter and drank 3 cups of coffee while the sun came up and my hands slowly stopped shaking. I still do traveling, but I sleep with the chair under the door handle now, every single time. I check the gap under the door before I turn the lights off. I know exactly where my phone is before I close my eyes, because here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. The scariest thing in the world isn't a monster. It isn't something that doesn't exist. It's a person who is patient, a person who already knows you're alone, and a person who has done this before. I almost didn't go. That's the thing I keep coming back to. I almost stayed home that weekend, and if I had, none of this would have happened. But I went. And now I can't sleep without checking every lock in the house twice. It was the first weekend of October, one of those rare ones where the weather actually cooperates in rural Tennessee. My buddy Derek had been renting this cabin up near Fall Creek Falls for a few years. He'd take it every autumn. Said it was the one place he could actually breathe. He invited me, his friend Sam, and his college friend Paul. 4 of us, 3 nights, nothing but woods and quiet and whatever food we packed in. I need you to understand something before I keep going. That area, it's not the middle of nowhere in the way people romanticize it. It's isolated in a way that doesn't feel peaceful once night falls. The roads get dark fast. The kind of dark where your headlights feel like they're barely cutting through. And the nearest anything, gas station, hospital, even cell signal, is about 40 minutes out. We got there Friday afternoon. The cabin was actually pretty nice. Wood-paneled walls, a stone fireplace, a wraparound porch that looked out over a tree line so dense it looked solid. We unloaded the truck, and for the first few hours everything was exactly what it was supposed to be. It was Sam who noticed the car first. We were sitting on the porch just after sundown, the fire going inside, and he mentioned it casually. Said he'd seen the same dark green pickup truck pass the gravel turnoff twice on our way up. He figured it was just somebody local. We all nodded. Nobody thought much of it. That night around 2 in the morning I woke up for no reason I could name. No sound, no nightmare. Just woke up with my heart already going faster than it should have been. I lay there for a minute staring at the ceiling, listening. The cabin had that deep country quiet, you know the kind, where you can hear your own pulse. I got up to use the bathroom, and on the way back I glanced out the kitchen window. The truck was parked at the end of the gravel lane, no headlights, no engine running that I could hear. Just sitting there in the dark, maybe 200 feet away, pointed toward the cabin. I stood at that window for probably 3 full minutes trying to talk myself into a rational explanation. Maybe somebody pulled over to sleep. Maybe it broke down. Maybe it was a different truck altogether and I was still half asleep making connections that weren't there. By the time I went back to bed, it was gone. I didn't say anything in the morning. I didn't want to ruin the trip over something I wasn't even sure I'd seen clearly. We hiked. We cooked out. Derek caught a couple of smallmouth bass from the creek and was genuinely proud of himself. It was a good day. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Saturday evening is when it stopped being something I could explain away. Paul went to grab the extra firewood from the stack behind the cabin. He was only gone about 4 minutes, but when he came back inside, his face was different. Pale in a way that's hard to fake. He said he'd found something in the woodpile, tucked between 2 of the logs on the bottom row like it had been placed there deliberately. It was a photograph, a Polaroid, of the cabin, taken from the tree line. You could see the edge of the porch, the glow from the kitchen window, Derek's truck in the lot. It was taken at night, and based on the angle, based on where the light was falling inside, it had been taken the previous night, while we were sleeping. Nobody said anything for a long moment. Then we all started talking at once. Derek wanted to call the sheriff. Paul was already walking toward his bedroom to pack. Sam kept saying it was probably a prank, that the property owner maybe had some weird habit, or that local kids were messing with tourists. I didn't say anything. I just kept thinking about the truck at the end of the lane, and how quiet this area was, and how 40 minutes is a long, long way to the nearest anything. We called the county sheriff's non-emergency line. The dispatcher was polite, said she'd send someone out, but her tone made it clear that someone out wouldn't be fast. Could be an hour, she said, maybe more. We decided to lock every door and window and wait inside. About 20 minutes in, the motion light above the back door turned on. We all froze. That light was on a sensor. Deer set it off sometimes, raccoons. It had tripped twice the night before and we'd barely blinked. But this time nobody moved, nobody breathed. We just looked at each other in that awful shared silence where everybody already knows something is wrong, but nobody wants to be the one to say it out loud. Then it went off. 60 seconds later, it came back on. Derek grabbed the one thing in the cabin that could function as a weapon, a fire poker, and moved toward the back window. I grabbed my phone, opened the flashlight. Sam pulled Paul close. Derek parted the curtain just enough to look out. There was a man standing at the edge of the porch light's reach, not moving. Just standing there with his hands at his sides, looking directly at the window. He was wearing a dark jacket, jeans, work boots. Completely ordinary in every way except that he was standing in the dark behind a rented cabin at 10:30 at night, staring at us like he had every right to be there. Derek yanked the curtain back all the way and stared at him through the glass. The man didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't turn away. He just kept looking. I called 911. I told them there was a man on the property, uninvited, not responding, and that we were inside and scared. The dispatcher kept me on the line. I kept watching. The man stayed exactly where he was, maybe a minute, maybe two, and then he just walked backward into the tree line. Slow and steady, like he wasn't leaving, just repositioning. Like he wanted us to know we hadn't scared him off. He decided to go. That distinction, that he chose to leave on his own terms, that was the part that hollowed me out. The deputy arrived 45 minutes later. He walked the property, checked the tree line with a spotlight, found nothing except a flattened area in the brush where someone had clearly been standing, and recently. He took the Polaroid as evidence, filed a report, and told us we were within our rights to leave if we felt unsafe. We left. All four of us were packed and in Derek's truck inside of 15 minutes. We drove in silence for most of the way back to the highway. Nobody said much. What was there to say? We'd seen it. We'd felt it. That specific feeling of being watched by someone who has already decided what kind of person they are and is simply choosing their moment. The sheriff's department followed up once, about 2 weeks later. They told Derek they'd spoken to the property owner, who had no idea who the man was. The truck, the green pickup we'd described, matched nothing in the local registry that they could tie to the area. The Polaroid had been developed from a disposable camera, no traceable purchase. Nobody was ever identified, nobody was ever charged. Whoever that man was, whatever he was doing out there, whatever he had planned, he just dissolved back into wherever he came from. I think about the timeline sometimes. The photograph was taken the first night while we were sleeping. That means he was already there before we noticed anything, before the truck at the end of the lane, before any of it. We arrived on Friday afternoon thinking we were alone out there. We weren't. And that's the part of this story I can't let go of. Not the man at the porch light, not the Polaroid, not the way he walked backward into the dark. It's the simple fact that feeling safe somewhere and actually being safe somewhere are two completely different things, and most of the time we never find out which one we had. Stay aware out there. I almost stayed home that weekend. My buddy Jason had been planning this camping trip for 2 months, just the four of us, deep in the Appalachian backcountry in eastern Tennessee. No signal, no roads, no people. He called it a detox from the real world. I called it a bad idea from the start, but I went anyway, because that's what you do when your friends ask. We drove out on a Friday afternoon. Me, Jason, his friend David, and our friend Caleb. 4 hours from Nashville, then another 45 minutes on a dirt road that barely qualified as a road. By the time we parked and started hiking in, the sun was already low. Jason had a spot picked out, a clearing near a creek, maybe 2 miles from the trailhead. He'd been there before, said it was perfect, quiet, isolated. We should have paid more attention to those 2 words. The first night was fine. We set up camp, cooked over the fire, laughed louder than we probably should have. Caleb brought a flask of something that tasted like gasoline, and we passed it around until the stars looked close enough to touch. By midnight, we were all in our tents, and I was out within minutes. I woke up at around 2 in the morning, not from a sound, not from anything dramatic. I just opened my eyes and I was awake, the way you sometimes are when your body decides sleep is done. I lay there for a few minutes listening to the creek and the wind moving through the trees. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds. Then I noticed the fire. We'd let it burn low before bed, but there were still a few orange coals glowing when I turned in. Now, looking through the mesh window of my tent, I could see it was fully lit again. Not just embers, actual flames, low but deliberate, like someone had fed it recently. I told myself Jason must have gotten up. He was always the one who worried about the fire going completely out. I pulled my jacket on and unzipped the tent, expecting to find him sitting there with a coffee cup or something. The camp was empty. I checked his tent. He was inside, sound asleep, David curled against him. I checked Caleb's tent. Same. I stood there in the cold Tennessee dark looking at a fire that had rebuilt itself, and I didn't have an explanation. Wind doesn't stack wood. Coals don't reignite into structured flames on their own. I sat by that fire for a long time. I told myself there was a rational answer. I just couldn't find it. By morning, I'd half convinced myself I'd imagined it, or sleepwalked, or something. I didn't bring it up at breakfast. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who kills the trip with paranoia. So I drank my coffee and watched the creek and let the sunlight talk me out of my unease. We spent the day hiking a ridge trail Jason had mapped out. Beautiful country, I'll give it that. We were out there for 6 hours and didn't see a single other person. On the way back to camp, though, something stopped me cold. On the trunk of a tree about 30 feet off the trail, someone had carved letters into the bark. Deep cuts, not old. The wood underneath was still pale and fresh. It said, "Go home." Not a date, not initials. Just those 2 words at eye level, like they were written for someone standing exactly where I was standing. Jason laughed it off. Said it was probably some local kid messing with hikers. Caleb agreed. David didn't say anything, just kept walking. I took a photo of it and kept walking too, but my chest felt tight for the rest of the hike back. That night was different, quieter. Even the creek seemed muffled. We didn't stay up as late. By 10 o'clock, everyone was in their tents, and I lay there in my sleeping bag with my phone in my hand, even though I had 0 bars, like holding it was some kind of comfort. I fell asleep. I woke up to David screaming. Not a short scream, not an "I saw a spider" scream. It was long and sharp, and it tore through the dark like something physical. I was out of my tent in seconds, Jason right behind me. David was standing at the edge of the tree line, pointing at something on the ground. It was our cooler, dragged about 40 feet from where we'd left it, latch broken open, food scattered. But that wasn't what had David screaming. Next to the cooler, arranged in a neat line on the ground, were our car keys, all 4 sets. Laid out in a row, side by side, like someone wanted us to know they'd been through our things, through our tents. Close enough to reach into our sleeping space while we were inside and take something off our persons without waking us. I sleep with my keys in my jacket pocket. I had fallen asleep in that jacket. My zipper was open when I woke up. Nobody said a word for almost a minute. Then Jason said quietly, "We need to leave, right now." We packed in under 10 minutes. I don't think any of us spoke more than 2 sentences the entire time. We killed the fire, grabbed what we could carry, and started hiking out in the dark with headlamps. 2 miles back to the car, it felt like 20. Halfway out, Caleb grabbed my arm and stopped walking. He pointed his headlamp off the trail to the left. There was a tent, not ours. A different one, dark green, old canvas. Set back in the trees, maybe 60 yards off the path. No fire, no light, just that tent sitting there in the middle of nowhere. We didn't call out. We didn't slow down. We walked faster. We made it to the car. All 4 keys still worked. We drove out that dirt road doing twice what was safe and didn't stop until we hit the interstate. The moment I had signal, I called 911 and reported what we found. The responding officer asked if we had seen anyone. I said no. He asked if anything was stolen. I said no. He took a report and said they'd send someone out to look, and he said it in the tone of someone who would not be sending anyone out to look. I went back to that photo on my phone, the carving in the tree. Go home. And I thought about the timing of it. Found on day 2 after one already strange night, like a warning with a deadline attached. The Tennessee Department of Forestry did a sweep of that area the following week. Jason got a call about it. They found the green tent. It had been there a while from the looks of it. They found other things nearby that they didn't describe in detail over the phone, but the ranger who called used the phrase "signs of extended habitation" and suggested we had been fortunate to leave when we did. He didn't explain what he meant by fortunate. He didn't have to. I think about it every time someone mentions a weekend trip. Every time someone says no signal, no roads, no people, like those are selling points. Because here's the thing, nobody tells you about truly isolated places. The reason they're isolated isn't always geography. Sometimes it's because something out there has made them that way. Something that's learned over a long time how to move without sound, how to get close without being seen, how to make you feel watched without ever showing itself. We were in that clearing for 2 nights. I don't know how long it had been watching before we arrived. And I genuinely don't know what would have happened if David hadn't woken up when he did. I don't let myself think about that for too long. If you enjoy